Alright guys, so with Void Erosion Purge being out, there are definitely a couple characters that are standout to use. We've already done a video on Lepic and I wanted to do one on Hailey. This is going to be me giving you a complete breakdown of how I play Hailey in Void Erosion Purge, and hopefully this helps you do a better job of playing Hailey and lets you kind of see the thought process I use when I'm in Void Erosion Purge. Alright, so the first thing I noticed coming into here is that I'm doing a level 30 and I'm doing it with one Glay and one other Hailey, which means we don't have any support. And this is going to be pretty par for the course when you go to run these, so don't really worry about it too much. Alright, so the first thing we do is we run up the hill, we put on our 3, and we get ready to start firing. Before we do, we use our 1 because our 1 procs a little bit of extra damage for us based on the build we use. Now, nobody used their Voltia, so I ended up having to use my Voltia to break the shields here. I didn't want to do that because I know I probably have the most DPS out of everybody, but somebody has to do it, and that somebody's me. Jumping into the next room, we already know that the spawns are all over the place, and we don't have anybody to group here. So the first thing we do is we pop our Asive, and the goal here is to try to figure out where all of the champs are. Once we start to figure out where the champs are and where we are in relation to them, we just systematically burn them down as fast as possible. One thing I'm trying to do is work with my team and not against my team. I have other people that are doing area damage, and we have a Glay who's putting in a lot of single target damage and damage in a really close radius. So my goal here isn't to fight against my team to slow down the time to kill. My goal here is just to team fire and try to speed up the time to kill as much as possible. Again, we used our Asive and we decided to help the Glay on the right side of the map. We can see that the other Hailey is not necessarily team firing with us, but they are working on trying to take out the rest of the room as well. And as you can see, I'm constantly popping my Asive here because we do not have somebody to group the enemies, and I need to know where I need to focus my fire after I take out the enemy I'm shooting at. So we did actually mess up on this pack, and as you noticed, the first thing I did when I jumped up was I started shooting. I should have actually used my 1, again, because this build gives me bonus damage when I get a skill crit hit, and because I didn't do that, we actually lost out on some damage here. It was a very small pack, and it wasn't that big of a deal, but it is something that I needed to be mindful of. Again, we used our Asive to see through the wall to figure out where the elite was so we could come in and go directly to the elite. You can see going into the next room, we did exactly the same thing, and you can tell that our teammates didn't because they were unsure where to shoot and they were kind of shooting all over the room. So this was another room where we came in and we just started spamming our 1 to get those crit hits off. We didn't need to use our Asive because we knew exactly where we were going to go. As you can see here, one thing I do is just spam my 1, and this is kind of set up to be done with the build that we have. So make sure when you're running a Hailey with the build that I use, or mainly with any builds, you want to kind of spam that 1 as much as possible. And one thing we did there, even though we could see where everything spawned, we went ahead and used our Asive a second time just to get a good idea of where everything was, because we wanted to make sure that we knew what targets we were going to start aiming for after we started shooting the first target. And even if you're a good player, there are going to be times where you go down. This isn't actually a big deal. It happens and it's part of playing aggressive. Sometimes things come unfrozen, and especially without a Lepic to really hold down the CC, it is going to happen every once in a while. My teammates were there, they were able to revive me, and we got right back into the fight. Another thing you'll notice is I'm really trying to pay attention to when I reload versus when I'm doing everything else. We want to try to reload in any of the downtime we have while we're traversing through the map, instead of getting caught reloading while we're in the middle of a gunfight. There are a few packs in the game where they are just too large, and you're going to have to reload, but for the most part, you can kind of time this out with Hailey. And this was one instance where I probably should have used my Asive, but we know there's only 2 spawn points, so we just kind of went in hot without the Asive. We did go in and use our 1. We want to make sure we get that skill crit hit off before we start shooting, and that gave us time to assess where the elite was and then start focusing on it. For this little hallway, we did use our Asive early, but we really didn't need to use our Asive. It's such a small pack, we basically know where the elite is every time, but we went ahead and did it anyway. So the play I just made was actually a really dumb play. I probably shouldn't have jumped right in because there's too good of a chance that I'm actually going to die. I put a lot of faith in my teammates to try to get the stuns off, and I went in just to break the barriers. This was another time where it's kind of unfortunate. I went ahead and I shot myself up in the air so I could get a good eagle eyes vision and use my Asive and get my skill target off. But you can see the game, basically the enemies have aimbot, and I got stuck with a grenade almost instantly. This will happen, and it's kind of dangerous to put yourself out there like that. But we felt comfortable enough to do it, but it was definitely a little bit more high risk than it needed to be, and we got punished for it. Now you can see after we cleared the pack, you notice that my one started shooting targets and it shot them all over the place. Now the reason I went for the enemy off by itself instead of the enemy with my team is because I realized that my team probably doesn't see this enemy. And if we all focus fire one enemy, this guy's going to get out of the way. So basically I just went for him myself, knowing that the bounce damage was going to help my team out and their bounce damage was going to help me out. As you can see, some of the first things we do again as we move up the hill is we go ahead, we use R1, we get our skill crit hit damage in, we get our extra damage, and then we pop our receive so we know exactly who we're shooting. By this point, you should start to notice a pattern. Alright, so we came in the room, we popped our receive, we assessed targets, and we started firing targets that were close to our teammate. We did see some targets behind the target we were looking at. Those were red bars, and they actually burnt out with the team fire on the target that was closest to it. After that, we're just going to kind of work around the room and take out the targets with our teammates. And again, you see we're constantly using our receive. Because we don't have anybody to group, we really need to know where all the enemies are. And this room has a really good chance of things being behind boxes and everything else. So I really want to try to use awareness to make sure I'm in the right spot and I'm helping my team. Now right there as we were walking to the room, we looked down and we realized our MP was at about half, and we knew that we were going to want more MP, so we just went out of our way to grab it because it was better to have it than to run out of MP moving forward. So in this instance, what actually happened is my teammates got out ahead of me, and they actually started to move on when nobody had done any damage to the elite but myself. This does happen every once in a while, and the only thing you can do is just hope they turn around to help you out. Again, another room. First thing we do, we hit our number one, we pop our receive, and we just assess where we need to work with our team. Alright, so as I come in the room, I decide I'm going to go left and I'm going to let my team go right. The idea here was just to try to pinch the enemies. Once I went down the ramp, I started taking way too much damage, and the shielded enemies came up and nobody took them out. So I had to switch guns to take out the shielded enemies. I ended up having to try to escape by going back up and over, but for whatever reason, I missed my grapple, it doesn't work, and then I kind of stumble up the box. Now, as you can see on my second approach to the ramp, I'm much more cautious. I'm staying at the top of the ramp, I'm using a bunch of cover, I'm only shooting the targets that I can see, and this has helped me stay a lot safer. And this is probably the approach I should have took the first time, but I wasn't thinking and I got a little bit overzealous. So we used our receive again, we figured out the last targets, and we went ahead and burnt them out really quick with our team. So coming up on Greg, I knew I wasn't going to be the first person there, and I really wasn't too worried, and I didn't care that I wasn't tanking. So I went ahead and shot myself up and just positioned myself to straight do DPS because I knew there wasn't really a good chance he was going to turn on me. Now, unfortunately, somehow we were too far away and it triggered his area attack. We all reset, but by the time we came back, we were a little bit too late and we didn't get to keep him locked on the platform. So as you can see, I was standing on the platform and the Glay was trying to get Greg back up on the platform. The only problem was I'm on the platform too, and the Glay is dancing back and forth, and I can see that if I stay up there, I'm going to get shot by Greg. So I roll off the platform and reposition. Now basically at this point, aggro is going all over the place. We can't get Greg in position, and we just had it down, and that down caused me to be targeted. So now it's my job to try to get Greg in position. So I make the executive decision to try to get Greg over on top of one of the pillars. But between Greg firing at me and me repositioning, I've already lost aggro and it went to somebody else. So after the aggro went to somebody else, I decided to move in and try to do a little bit of damage. While I'm doing damage, Greg decides to reassess targets and decides to target me again. So now there's a huge problem. I have no idea who actually has the aggro. So I move forward, Greg jumps up, and I think maybe it's me, so I go into position to lock him in and realize that I actually don't have the aggro, so I put myself back up on the stage because my goal is to stay as close to Greg as humanly possible. If you start getting any distance away from him, there's a good chance he's going to do the rain down missiles. So with the second set of DPS going on, we're just trying to figure out where the aggro is going and who's going to pull him. It looks like they're getting him back up to the stage, which is awesome, but I went ahead and set myself up on top of the pillar in case maybe he decided to change targets again. Now, once I saw I didn't have aggro, I jumped up to start doing DPS, but if you look at the mini-map, the biggest issue right now is where everybody's standing in relation to Greg. While you can hold him in place standing at the opposite end of the stage like this, it's actually too far away from him and it will trigger him to use his rocket attack, which is what happens. At this point, the hope is that he's not going to do a rocket attack, but I know that the person is too far away that's the tank, and we're going to see another rocket attack, and we actually end up seeing another one. So unfortunately, because we all had to roll away and roll back in, the tank actually got killed because they were out of position, which is very easy to have happen, especially if you have to reassess. So I moved in to res the tank, but honestly, Greg was so low health that the other person was able to burn him out, and we were able to finish this fight. All right, guys, and that's it. That's really all you need to know how to play Hailey. Hailey's not as involved as maybe trying to play somebody like Lepic, but there are still a few nuanced things you need to do. You need to spam her 1. You need to pay attention to your teammates. You need to do everything you can to team fire with your team, especially if you don't have a Lepic. Just keep in mind that you don't want to get overzealous and you don't want to rush the middle of a room, because even though you can freeze things, if they come unfroze, you're going to have a lot of things really mad at you and they're going to come for you really hard. At the end of the day, enjoy yourself and enjoy playing Hailey because she's a great DPS and she makes consistently good times. Hopefully these tips help you with Hailey and help you enjoy playing her and her playstyle. Let me know down in the comments if you have any other things that you think me or the community need to know about. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and always feel free to come check me out live over on Twitch. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.